On December 18th, 2024, at precisely 0847 hours local time, 6 aircraft lifted off from Misawa Air Base in northern Japan. They were F-35A Lightning IIs, their radar-absorbent skin drinking in the pale winter sun. Formation tight, systems synchronized, they banked east over the Pacific before turning southwest. Destination was the contested waters where the East China Sea bleeds into the Philippine Sea. This was a statement, because on that morning, Japan officially became the second largest F-35 operator on the planet, surpassing the United Kingdom, Italy, and every other American ally except the United States itself. And 500 miles to the west, in a reinforced command bunker beneath the streets of Beijing, analysts were recalculating everything they thought they knew about the balance of power in the Pacific. The numbers tell part of the story. As of late 2024, Japan operates 69 F-35 fighters, with firm orders for at least 147 aircraft in total. 42 of those are F-35A jets, the conventional takeoff and landing variant, flown by the Japan Air Self-Defense Force from bases like Misawa and Kamaki. 27 are F-35B aircraft, the short takeoff and vertical landing variant, operated by both the Air Self-Defense Force and destined for Japan's 2 converted helicopter carriers, now reclassified as light aircraft carriers. The Izumo and Kaga, both modified specifically to operate the F-35B, represent the first Japanese aircraft carriers to sail since World War II ended in 1945. That is not just a capability increase, that is a psychological watershed. But raw numbers miss the deeper transformation. Japan is not just buying American jets, Japan is building them. The F-35 final assembly and checkout facility at Nagoya, operated by Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, has produced over 40 aircraft domestically. Japanese companies manufacture 38% of the F-35 airframe components, including the forward fuselage for every single F-35A built worldwide. This is not a customer relationship, this is industrial integration at the deepest level. Japan's defense industry now sits inside the F-35 supply chain as a load-bearing pillar, which means Japan does not just operate 5th-generation fighters, Japan builds 5th-generation fighters. And that distinction changes everything about how China must calculate the strategic equation. Consider what China faces across the East China Sea. For decades, the People's Liberation Army Air Force held a comfortable numerical advantage over Japan. More aircraft, more missiles, more bases closer to the fight. Japan's F-15J fleet, though modernized, could not contest Chinese airspace without catastrophic losses. The F-2, Japan's domestic multi-role fighter, is competent but not cutting-edge. China's J-20 stealth fighter, whatever its actual capabilities, represented a qualitative leap that Japan had no answer for. Until now. The F-35 does not just narrow that gap. In key respects, it inverts it. The F-35's sensor fusion is the killer app. 4 distributed aperture system cameras provide 360-degree infrared coverage. An APG-81 active electronically scanned array radar is capable of tracking multiple targets at ranges exceeding 100 miles while maintaining low probability of intercept. An electronic warfare suite maps the electromagnetic spectrum in real time, identifies threats, and jams emitters automatically. All of this data is fused into a single tactical picture displayed on the pilot's helmet-mounted display. The pilot does not look at radar screens. The pilot looks at the world, and the world is annotated with threat rings, target tracks, friendly positions, and weapon envelopes. It is not a fighter jet. It is a flying intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance node that happens to carry missiles. Sensor fusion is the game changer. Now imagine 6 of these aircraft networked through data link, sharing every sensor contact in real time. One F-35 sees a contact at the edge of its radar range. All 6 F-35s see that contact. One F-35 detects radar emissions from a Chinese destroyer 80 miles away. All 6 know the destroyer's exact position, type, and engagement range. The formation operates as a distributed sensor grid, each aircraft extending the other's awareness. A Chinese fighter 60 miles out might see nothing on its radar, but it is being tracked by 3 F-35s simultaneously, its position updated every second, and weapon solutions calculated automatically. By the time the Chinese pilot gets a radar warning, the AM-120 AMRAAM is already in the air, climbing through 40,000 feet, the terminal seeker going active. China's problem compounds when you factor in geography. Japan's main islands stretch like a barrier across China's access to the Pacific. Every maritime approach and every air corridor China would use to project power eastward runs through zones Japan can now saturate with F-35s. Misawa Air Base sits 400 miles from Vladivostok and 650 miles from the northern tip of the Korean peninsula. Komaki Air Base is 500 miles from Shanghai. Nutabaru Air Base, slated to receive F-35Bs, overlooks the Ryukyu Islands and the southern approaches to the East China Sea. These are not forward operating locations. These are permanent bases with hardened shelters, stockpiled munitions, and organic support infrastructure. And now they are all defended by aircraft that can see Chinese forces long before those forces can see them. Then there is the matter of the Izumo and Kaga. Each ship displaces 27,000 tons fully loaded. Each can operate up to 12 F-35Bs, though typical loadouts will probably settle around 8 to 10 to allow for fuel and ordnance storage. The flight decks have been reinforced with heat-resistant coatings to handle the F-35B vertical landing exhaust, which produces 40,000 pounds of thrust. Elevators have been enlarged. Maintenance facilities have been upgraded. Japan did not just modify these ships. Japan transformed them into mobile F-35 bases that can reposition anywhere in the Pacific within days. A Chinese planner trying to calculate air defense coverage over Taiwan or the Senkaku Islands now has to account for floating airfields that were not there last week and might not be there next week, but are absolutely there right now, 200 miles off your coast, launching strike fighters you cannot reliably track. The strategic implications spiral outward. Japan's F-35 fleet doesn't operate in isolation. It integrates with US forces through the same data links, the same mission planning systems, the same logistics chain. American F-35s at Kadena Air Base in Okinawa and aboard the USS Ronald Reagan share a common operating picture with Japanese F-35s in real time. An American E-2D Hawkeye airborne early warning aircraft can cue Japanese fighters to targets 300 miles away. Japanese F-35s can provide targeting data for American destroyers launching SM-6 missiles in anti-air or anti-surface mode. This isn't coordination, this is integration. The line between Japanese and American air power in the Pacific has blurred to the point of irrelevance from a tactical perspective. China's response has been predictable but revealing. There are increased J-20 patrols near the median line of the Taiwan Strait and more frequent probes of Japan's air defense identification zone, sometimes 30 or 40 Chinese military aircraft in a single day. New radar installations now dot the coast opposite Taiwan, and additional HQ-9 long-range surface-to-air missile batteries have been deployed. All of this is expensive, and all of it ties down forces, but none of it solves the fundamental problem. China is building a defensive shell to protect its own airspace because it can no longer assume air superiority beyond that shell. The People's Liberation Army Air Force flew wherever it wanted 3 years ago. Now it flies carefully, watching for electronic signatures that might indicate an F-35 is closer than the radar suggests. And there's the economic dimension. Japan's F-35 program costs approximately $23 billion over the life of the contract, including aircraft, support equipment, training, and sustainment. That's real money, but it is money Japan can afford. China, meanwhile, is pouring resources into the J-20 program, the FC-31 carrier-based stealth fighter program, advanced air-to-air missiles, new destroyers, and a carrier fleet expansion that is bleeding the defense budget even as the economy slows. Japan is buying a proven, mature platform with a global supply chain and United States support. China is developing everything from scratch, absorbing all the risk and bearing all the cost overruns. Japan gets fifth-generation capability today. China gets fifth-generation capability eventually, maybe if the programs work, and at a price that is still climbing. But capability is not just about the platform, it is about the pilots. Japan's F-35 training pipeline runs through Luke Air Base in Arizona, where Japanese pilots fly alongside American, Australian and South Korean counterparts. They are learning not only how to fly the F-35, but how to employ it in combined operations with Allied forces. Tactics developed at red flag exercises in Nevada are imported directly into Japanese doctrine. Japanese pilots are accumulating hours in an aircraft that most Chinese pilots have never seen in person, let alone trained against. Experience compounds. By 2030, Japan will have squadrons of pilots with thousands of hours in type, deeply familiar with the aircraft's capabilities and limitations, and fluent in joint operations with Allied forces. China will have pilots flying an aircraft that is still evolving, tactics that are still being written, and no Allied partners who operate the same platform to train with. The Taiwan question looms over all of this. If China moves on Taiwan, Japan's position becomes critical. The closest Japanese territory to Taiwan is Yonaguni Island, less than 70 miles from the Taiwanese coast. F-35s operating from Nutabaru or from the Izumo, positioned east of Taiwan, could contest Chinese air superiority over the strait without ever entering Chinese airspace. They do not need to win the air war. They just need to make it costly enough and uncertain enough that China's invasion timeline stretches from days to weeks. And every day that passes is another day for American carriers to arrive, another day for international pressure to build, another day for the Chinese economy to hemorrhage capital as the world watches. Japan's F-35s are not a standalone solution to a Taiwan crisis, but they are a complication Beijing cannot ignore and cannot easily suppress. There is also the North Korea variable. Pyongyang's missile tests continue, each one a reminder that threats are not always symmetrical or predictable. Japan's F-35s provide a persistent monitoring capability over the Sea of Japan, tracking launches in the boost phase, gathering telemetry data, and identifying launch sites. The F-35's infrared search and track system can detect missile plumes at enormous ranges. In a crisis scenario, F-35s could theoretically launch airborne intercepts against North Korean ballistic missiles during the boost phase, before the missiles reach altitude or deploy countermeasures. That is a difficult shot, and it may be impossible depending on geometry and timing. But the fact that it is even theoretically possible changes North Korea's calculus. Every missile test is now observed in high fidelity by aircraft Pyongyang cannot see and cannot shoot down. China's strategic community understands what is happening. Open-source Chinese military journals from 2024 devote increasing space to countering stealth aircraft, developing new radar frequencies and deploying passive detection systems that track aircraft by their electromagnetic emissions rather than by reflected radar energy. The PLAAF is experimenting with tactics designed to force F-35s to reveal themselves, using decoys and sacrificial aircraft to bait American and Japanese fighters into active radar use. There is talk of developing hypersonic anti-air missiles that could engage stealth fighters at extreme range before they close to firing position. Some of these ideas might work, most will not. All of them cost money and time, and all of them are reactions to a threat China did not adequately prepare for, because China assumed the window of opportunity would stay open longer than it did. Japan's acquisition of F-35 jets isn't just about aircraft, it's about credibility. For decades, Japan's military posture was defensive, reactive, constrained by Article 9 of the Constitution, and shaped by a political culture deeply scarred by the Second World War. The F-35 represents a quiet but unmistakable shift. Japan is not just defending its territory. Japan is securing a sphere of influence, projecting power across the entire Western Pacific, and ensuring that no regional actor can alter the status quo without accounting for Japanese capabilities. That's not aggression, that's strategic clarity. And China, which has spent 30 years building its own sphere of influence through economic leverage and military modernization, now finds a peer competitor sitting directly in its path. The balance isn't static. China will adapt. New Chinese platforms are in development. Tactics will evolve. But adaptation takes time, and time is the one resource you can't recover. Japan is operational with 69 F-35s today. China is planning responses to a threat that is already deployed, already integrated, already flying combat air patrols over disputed waters. Every month that passes, Japan adds another pilot to the operational roster, another aircraft to the flight line, another layer of capability to the network. China is playing catch-up in a domain where catching up is exceptionally difficult because the target keeps moving. So when those 6 F-35s took off from Misawa on that cold December morning, they weren't just another training flight, they were a signal. To allies, we are committed. To adversaries, we are ready. To history, the Pacific power structure has shifted. Japan is no longer the junior partner hoping American power will be enough. Japan is an independent pole of military capability, equipped with some of the most advanced combat aircraft on the planet, piloted by professionals who train to win, supported by an industrial base that builds the very systems they fly. China can continue probing, testing, pushing, but the cost of pushing just went up. The risk of miscalculation just increased. The margin for error just narrowed because Japan isn't building a defensive force anymore. Japan is building a deterrent. And deterrence only works if the other side believes you will use it. The F-35s circling over the Pacific aren't there to look impressive. They're there to make sure that when China calculates the cost of the next move, the answer is too high. That's the game. That's always been the game. And right now, Japan just put a lot more chips on the table. What do you think China's next move will be? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to see how this story continues, make sure you are subscribed because the Pacific is not getting any quieter. Thanks for watching.